Let's say something completely insane happens tomorrow. You wake up, check your phone, and you see a number in your bank account that doesn't even look real. $50 billion.
Wait. What? 50 billion? No way. That's not possible.
Yeah, $50 billion. Now, forget about the private jets. Forget about the mansions. Forget about the yachts. Because there's a much more interesting question. What would you actually do with it? And more importantly, how would you make sure you never lose it? Because here's the thing. If you gave $50 billion to an average person, they could probably destroy their entire fortune surprisingly fast. But if you gave it to someone who really understands money, something completely different could happen. They wouldn't spend the $50 billion. They'd make the $50 billion work. Let me show you what I mean. First, you probably wouldn't touch most of it. Seriously, if I suddenly had $50 billion, the first thing I'd do wouldn't be buying a Lamborghini. It wouldn't even be buying a house. I'd stop. I'd take a breath. And I'd build a team. Lawyers, accountants, investment managers, tax specialists, security experts, people whose entire job is to make sure one stupid decision doesn't cost me hundreds of millions of dollars. Because when you're dealing with 50 billion, even a tiny mistake becomes enormous. 1% of 50 billion is $500 million. Just gone.
That's why the first rule would be simple. Protect the money. Then make it grow. And this is where things get interesting. Let's say, purely as an example, your investments somehow averaged 5% a year. I'm not saying that's guaranteed. It's just a simple example. 5% of $50 billion is $2.5 billion every year. That's about $6.8 million every single day. Think about that. You could wake up tomorrow, do absolutely nothing, and theoretically have millions of dollars being generated by your assets. And that's the part most people don't understand about extreme wealth. At some point, you stop working for money. Your money starts working for you. Now imagine you wanted to invest that money. Would you put all 50 billion into one company? Obviously not. That would be insane. You'd spread it around. Stocks, real estate, bonds, private companies, infrastructure, technology, maybe energy, maybe artificial intelligence, maybe robotics, maybe companies that don't even exist yet. And here's why having 50 billion is so powerful. You can afford to be wrong. Imagine you invest $100 million into 10 different companies. 9 of them fail. That's horrible, right? Well, not necessarily. Because if that 10th company becomes worth tens of billions, one success could completely change the equation. That's the power of capital. You can make multiple bets without risking your entire future. But let's forget investing for a second. Let's talk about spending. Because this is where things get funny. Imagine you decide, I don't care. I'm spending $1 million every single day. 1 million every single day. That's $365 million a year. Now imagine doing that for 10 years. That's $3.65 billion. 10 years. $1 million every single day. And you still wouldn't have spent even $10 billion. You'd still have $40 billion left. And that's assuming your money isn't making anything while you're spending it. But here's the weird part. What would you even spend it on? How many cars do you need? 10? 20? 100? How many houses can you live in at the same time? How many watches can you wear? How many private jets do you actually need? Eventually, you run into a strange problem. You run out of things that actually make you happier. And that's when money starts becoming something completely different. Instead of asking, what can I buy?
You start asking, what can I build? Imagine putting a few $billion into research, artificial intelligence, medicine, clean energy, space technology, education, infrastructure. Imagine building companies instead of just buying things. Imagine creating thousands of jobs, funding scientists, building schools, creating scholarships, supporting research that might take 20 or 30 or 50 years to pay off.
At that point, you're not really buying luxury anymore. You're buying possibility. But there's another side to this, and it's probably the part nobody thinks about when they imagine having $50 billion. Power. Because $50 billion isn't just money, it's influence. If you own major companies, people's jobs depend on you. If you invest heavily in an industry, your decisions can affect that industry. If you own massive amounts of real estate, your decisions can affect entire communities.
So suddenly, being incredibly rich isn't just about freedom. It's also about responsibility. And that's why, if someone really understood wealth, they probably wouldn't be obsessed with becoming richer. They'd be obsessed with protecting their freedom, protecting their family, and building things that survive them. Because, let's be honest, there is a huge difference between having $1 million and having $50 billion. But there's a surprisingly small difference between having $10 billion and $50 billion. Your life probably doesn't become 5 times better. You don't eat 5 times better food. You don't sleep 5 times better. You don't become 5 times happier. You just have a much bigger number. And eventually, the number stops being the point because there are things money can't buy. Time, real friendships, memories, trust, purpose. You can buy the biggest house in the world, but you can't buy a reason to wake up excited. You can buy a private jet, but you can't buy another year of your life. You can buy almost anything except meaning. So if you somehow woke up tomorrow with $50 billion, maybe the smartest thing you could do wouldn't be to become the richest person alive. Maybe it would be to make enough money so that you'll never have to worry about money again, and then use the rest to build something that actually matters. Because at $50 billion, the question isn't really, what can I buy? It's, what can I change? And honestly, that's a much more interesting question. So, if you woke up tomorrow and saw $50 billion in your account, what would you do first? I'd actually like to know.